Welcome back, everybody. In this video I want to kind of go over some different strategies for making solid parts, editing solid parts, adding things, and all of that good fun stuff that you might need to do for your second project. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a connector, a leg connector for this side over here. All right. And what I'm going to do, the strategy I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this outer curve as a solid first. And then I'm going to extrude this as a surface, or sorry, as a solid as well, but use that to extrude, use that to cut a negative space out of that connector. And the reason I'm doing this separately is so that this piece can start a little further down into the body of the spider. It's better that it is inset or in the body a little bit because it will be a stronger connection. If it were to just, if the PVC piping were to just be inserted into this spot here, then there's a potential for it to break off right at this surface. Whereas if you have it inserted a little bit, it's less likely to do that. Now I can see at the moment my coordinate plane has kind of changed. I don't honestly know how that changed, but I'm going to come up here to view, set coordinate plane. I'm going to do perpendicular to curve, select a curve. I'm going to select this one and I'm just going to click the end point. And that way we're also already nice and perpendicular, or sorry, flush with our existing curves as well. And it'll just make things a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this guy and I'm going to come up to solid, extrude planar curve, straight. And I'm going to do both sides. Doesn't really matter at the moment. I'm just going to extrude it up. Let's do 0.375, which is about 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to hit enter. And there we go. We've got this part sticking up. Now, if we look at the other legs, they're probably going to intersect in these really strange and interesting ways. That's quite all right for the exterior, or the exterior of this connection. The interior of the connection might be a little bit different, which I will talk about in a second. But before we cut this and this with the other part, we need to join them. And this is in leg connector right now. That's fine. I'm going to work in main body, and I'm going to select this part, and I can easily connect to my solid union. Now, these are relatively simple parts right now. If you had a much more detailed part, let's say like threaded rod or bolt or something that has some really intricate surfaces, just doing a union like that might be a little difficult because the math required to sort of solve these intersections and just generate these curves and these new surfaces might have difficulty if your geometry is very, very detailed. And so that's, one thing I really tried to stress in the first project was making things flush or coincident with each other to just make things easier to join them later on. Now, with simple geometry, it's not a problem. But again, with crazier geometry, things can get crazy unless they have a very clean, easy surface, like a circle and a circle, a square and a square that they made up to. Anyway, I'm going to come up to wireframe viewport just so I can see that inner surface. And nice thing about reorienting my coordinate plane is the gumball is also oriented with the coordinate plane, so I'm going to bring that down, and I'm just going to eyeball it so it's kind of in line with this edge. And I don't want to go any further from that too much because I'm going to have to make the same extrusion or the same cut going in here, and I don't want this to cut into this or anything like that. So for right now, we'll leave it right there. And I can then come up to solid, extrude planar curve straight. And I'm not going to do both sides. I'm just going to bring it up like this. and go back to my shaded viewport, and that way I have it. I'm going to select that new body that's constructed, and I'm going to come up to solid and do Boolean difference. And it's going to ask me to select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract with. I'm going to select this object, but I'm also going to delete the import because I don't really care about it afterwards. And hit enter, and there we go. And that's a nice way to very cleanly remove objects or kind of delete that surface. So now what would have been smart is if before doing all of that I mirrored those two pieces to be on the other side. Thankfully I could just do a lot of Control Z action. And where are you? There we go. Well, I'll have to mirror it in a separate viewport, obviously, because this coordinate plane is in a weird direction. I'm just going to do that later. Oh, thinking. Thinking computer. Go. All right. So now, one other thing I want to discuss is adding structure to these connectors. Now you see how these curves here, they represent the PVC piping and they're going to bend. Now they come straight, but we're going to bend them. And what this might happen, or what this might cause, is stress on this part. And it might cause it to break right at this intersection right here, or this section of this part. And that's because it's trying to rip this part, apart. It's trying to grab it and take it apart, potentially. And 3D parts, depending on the orientation you print them, could be structurally sound, or they could be very unstructural based on the orientation of the layers, because that layer, while it's connected to the previous layer, it's not a strong layer. They could split because they're, only really kind of being gooped together. They're not necessarily physically being bonded. So what I want to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of structure here to here. And in this week, we'll discuss free body force diagrams and things to help you determine where you might want to add some extra structure to things. And this also is probably a good opportunity to maybe what if we wanted to kind of indulge a little bit in the design and the aesthetics of it. Because this right now, it's just a part. It's just basic functionality. It's not super interesting personally. So let us start by creating a coordinate plane that essentially cuts through it. And that's practically almost the same coordinate plane that we used with our curve. So I'm going to come up here to View, Set Coordinate Plane. And just to make things easy, I'm just going to do 3 points. And I've got my center snap on. I'm going to turn my intersection snap on. So I'm going to say center of, let's do this intersection as a center point. Not that it really matters. Center here and center here. All right, look at that. Perfect. Perfect. And I'm going to go to Set View, View, Set Camera View, C-Plane Top. There we go. Cool. Oops. View, Set C-Plane. All right. Now, now that I'm in the correct, again, Okay, now that I'm in the correct view plane, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put down a pretty easy planar surface, just corner to corner, whatever works, because what I want to extrapolate from this is just essentially the exterior lines of this to add some structure. So I'm going to select this object, and I'm going to come up to curve, curve from objects, and do intersection. And it should give us those curves. I can get rid of this surface. I'm just going to delete it, and I'm going to hide those curves. Now this curve is here and there, so I'm actually just going to explode it, and I'm going to explode this one, because all I care about is this curve, this curve, this curve, this curve, and this exterior curve here. And I'm going to join those and get rid of the rest. Oh, interesting. There we go. And what I can do from here is then kind of just create some geometry. Now, before I do, one thing to note is that I'm going to make a cross-section of a support or flange that'll come out here. If I were to extrude that, then it would only touch right at that line. So I need to just offset this curve just a little bit. So I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to come over here to curve, offset, offset curve, and I'm only going to do like 0.01. Perfect. Oop, here we go. Let's do 0.01. Let's do 0.2. There we go. And same with this one. And then I'm going to just delete that one. And you'll see in a second why I did that, hopefully. But for right now, I'm just going to add some nice elaborate lines. Just maybe do some control points just for funsies. We'll do endpoint. And because this is spidery, maybe we want to go with some more organic looking object. I'm just going to do a real quick one for now. And then for this side, do something equally interesting. And then I can select both of these, and I can just do solid, extrude, planar, curve, straight, and I'm going to make sure both sides are on, and I'm going to turn my connector back on so I can kind of see what's going on. Now, because it's offset just a little bit, you see how I probably don't want to go too far out, and you can see how that line right about there, 0.13 something inches, it's going to be past the interior of this connector part. So I'm going to stay within the interior and I'll just say right about there or so. And we've got our flange, and then what I can do is should be able to just hopefully join them together, and it should hopefully come out to be pretty surface. Solid, solid union. Oh, solid union with this guy. And there we go. Look at that. So now it's got an interesting sort of shape and an interesting flange to kind of give it a little extra support. That flange personally looks a little bit too big to me. I think if I had a little bit more time instead of rushing this video, I would probably edit that down a little bit. Oh, I'm kind of stuck in this view, C-plane, world top. Oh, my camera is still stuck on the, let's see, where are you, perspective view? Well, let's see. I'll just come back and finish that later. But it's a little easier, and if I turn my figure back on, I can see the relationship with everything else. And yeah, I would say, that those flange shapes right now, not really a huge fan of it. But this is also something to think about is you see how this is a sharp corner right here. If that's going to be close to someone's body, not such a great idea. So I hope that helps you kind of determine how we can use coordinate planes and also orienting different objects so we can construct our connectors and things like that. So please look at the lab documents to determine exactly what is required for this week's lab, but we will be following this process. So thanks for watching and see you